forces recapture more than half of a strategic city near the border with Lebanon. Some are describing this and similar advances as a game changer that would eventually lead to an end to more than 2 years of a deadly insurgency against President Bashar al-Assad. As the US and Russia agree on a peace conference, others are asking, can peace talks work as long as terrorists from all over the world continue to operate within Syrian soil? Reports of the discovery of Israeli-made equipment have also raised questions on the extent of cooperation between the insurgents, regional Arab states and Tel Aviv.
Here we'd like to welcome to our listening audience Johnny Achi from the Arab Americans for Syria, who's been giving us consistent information from a different point of view of the Western media. Brother Johnny.
Hello, Don. Happy to be on your show.
Greetings. Can you give us an update on what's going on? I know Kerry, quote-unquote, Secretary of State gives little weight to Assad's recent victories, opposition in discussions, getting ready for the big discussion coming up in terms of a political solution, as well as the United States government, or Assad suggesting that peace today will fail because the West wants to prolong war. Can you kind of give us some analysis on all this?
Absolutely. If I may just make a small introduction into this, I would like to start about the U.S. involvement in the war in Syria. I think the citizens of this great nation have the right to know that their government is deeply involved in the spilling of the Syrian blood. It's no longer secret that the U.S. government, the CIA, are deeply involved. What the U.S. likes to call a fight for freedom and democracy in Syria. We know that what is really happening is a regime change, like it did in Iraq, like it did in Libya, the overthrow of a legitimate government by a sovereign nation, by the imperialist power. That is exactly what's happening. Now, the U.S. got involved directly in Iraq. They did not get involved directly in Syria, but they're being involved by proxy, of course. This is actively in recruiting, training, arming insurgencies and jihadists. 2 weeks ago, the New York Times article titled "Arms Airlift to Syrian Rebels Expands with the CIA Aid." It detailed information about hundreds of military cargo flights by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, landing in different Turkish and Jordanian airports, which is the northern and southern neighboring countries of Syria, with tens of thousands of tons of weapons. So the CIA, based on the article, says has been the coordinating agency for that massive weapons shipment from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey to the inside of Syria and into the hands of the armed groups. Now, since this no longer being a secret, the U.S. has to cover its tracks. And 2 weeks ago, and this is very important to mention to the audience, to the listener, that 2 weeks ago, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee voted overwhelmingly to openly arm elements in the Syrian opposition. Okay, the legislation, which passed bipartisan 15-3 overwhelmingly, would authorize the shipment of arms and military training to moderate rebels. We talked about this many times before. Moderate rebels, who they call it, have gone through a thorough vetting process. Now, who do they mean by moderate rebel? Obviously, it's not Nusra Front, which is really the strongest opposition on the ground in Syria. They cannot be them because they've been placed on the U.S. List of international terrorism, because the Nusra Front have openly pledged loyalty and swore allegiance to Ayman al-Zawahiri of Al-Qaeda. So it must be then the other group, which is called the Free Syrian Army. The whole world 2 weeks ago saw the most shocking video that may have ever been recorded. A well-known commander of the Free Syrian Army, Al-Farouk Brigade, his name is Abu Sakar. He had appeared in many videos on Al Jazeera before. And he is what the U.S. considers to be a moderate rebel. He's the man who was shot in this most shocking video, saying he wants to eat the minorities' hearts out in Syria, specifying the sect Alawite, and then proceeded in cutting a Syrian soldier's heart and liver out, and holding them in both hands and actually taking a bite out of the heart. This man, okay, that's what the U.S. has, want to arm. These type of people, they want to replace the eye doctor, the secular Bashar al-Assad government, with these kind of rebels. Okay, so let's just agree that U.S. has only one aim, and that is to destroy a secular nationalist government that U.S. leaders view as an obstacle to their goal dominating the entire Middle East. I just wanted to talk about that briefly because that was important that happened 2 weeks ago. Now let's move on to what's happening in Al-Qusayr, and I think that's the city that the video that you played is talking about. a big date took place on April 16. Prior to April 16, the Syrian army was on the defensive pretty much for the last 2 years, trying sincerely to work a peaceful solution out of this crisis. So in that time, the northern and southern part of the country were falling in the hands of tens of thousands of foreign jihadis. Damascus countryside and many locations also got infested, and mortar shells were falling in Damascus. And I had been coming on your show, and we've been talking about that. But on April 16, okay, the Syrian government decided that it has to go on the offensive. A presidential amnesty was issued on that same day, April 16. Imagine, amidst all that, the Syrian president issued a presidential amnesty and gave it 1 month, was given to criminals to send themselves. And the Syrian Arab army was given order to liberate the country and terminate the terrorists. And that's what happened since April 16. And the next 2-3 weeks, the Syrian army made huge advances in pretty much all of the country. And especially in what we call Al-Qusayr, which is a control center for the command center, let's just say, for the whole terrorists in the whole country. They started taking out villages nearing, circulating Al-Qusayr. That's when we start hearing about weapons of mass destruction, trying to get a pretext into Syria. Because the advances in the first 2 weeks of that, from April 16th to about May 1st, they were tremendous. And it's showing that, the insurgencies are falling. Then on May 5th, we got the Israeli airstrike as the last attempt. And that same moment, when the Israeli hit the Damascus, there was attacks on all of the center of Damascus from different checkpoints. So it was a coordinated attack by the insurgency. That didn't work either. The Syrian army never took his eyes off the target. And now, in the last week or so, finally entered the Qusayr on May 16. That amnesty was obviously taken out. They gave them one last chance to surrender or face, that they will enter the city. Now, at this moment here, the U.S. and we start seeing John Kerry goes to Moscow right after when Al-Qusayr is being encircled. So U.S. John Kerry goes to Moscow. The very next day, the UK's camera visits Moscow. French Fabius, who was insisting on a military end to the Syrian crisis, is suddenly stating there must be a political, peaceful solution to the crisis. So after 2 years of the Syrian government trying to seek a peaceful solution out of the crisis, were rejected, then all this suddenly happens when the Syrian army is circulating Al-Qusayr, or circling the Al-Qusayr.